Hi everyone, this is Hakan Karaosman. Welcome to JCM Impact Conversations. We are so happy to be back, and with this new episode, we are kicking off the new series. So hopefully, these conversations will inspire, will challenge, and will give you some ideas to create implications and some really strong contributions with your research and beyond. In this first episode, I am really thrilled to be joined by a powerhouse. I'm so happy to discuss sustainability, due diligence, legislations, and some challenges ahead. In this episode, I'm joined by Professor Andreas Rasche. Andreas is a professor of business in society at Copenhagen Business School. And also at Copenhagen Business School, he is the head of Center for Sustainability. He also serves as Associate Dean for the Full-Time MBA Programme. And he is a very vocal and brilliant scholar and citizen to raise awareness and to ask questions around policy making, and legislation. So follow Andreas on LinkedIn and on his personal channels, and you will get so much inspirations. So without further ado, now let's bring Andreas to the stage and let's discuss all things sustainability. Welcome to the JSM Impact Conversations. Hi everyone, welcome back. So now I am joined by Andreas Rasche, and I'm really happy to be with him. Andreas, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting.
Thank you so much. So we have so many things to cover, and we will talk about all things sustainability. But just for the context for our audience, today we will talk about omnibus. What is it, what it means, and what is the implications for supply chain researchers. But just to expose the landscape and the context, basically omnibus is a simplification package from the EU to simplify legislations around due diligence and reporting. And it also aims to amend multiple legislations through one mechanism, and legislations include CSRD and also CSDDD. And in the context of 2025, when there are so many problems that are happening all at once, we need to take this quite seriously. And we are really grateful to Andreas, because Andreas is really vocal about all these things, and he's using his voice and his platform really wisely to raise awareness and also to challenge the policy discussions around this area. So, Andreas, without further ado, I want to ask you, where are we at the moment around Omnibus? What is the status? And where do we go from here?
All right. Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you, Hakan. I think we are at the point in time, I think, where the last touches are put upon the so-called Parliament's position on the omnibus. So the omnibus, as a background, is a directive in the EU system, and whenever directives or regulations are being negotiated, you get three different opinions. You get a proposal by the European Commission. The European Commission has the right of initiative because it's the executive body. Then you have the council representing the member states, and you have the parliament representing the citizens, the people of Europe. So far, we have the proposal by the Commission, we have the position by the Council, and probably by mid-October, we will have the position by the Parliament then. And then we have all three positions, and these then are negotiated, and policymakers try to find a common ground. This will likely happen in November, December. And based on this, then we will have a final legal text, probably early next year or by the end of the year.
Thank you, Andreas. Also, in your work, you are really vocal and really wise about this paradox and long-term trade-offs between simplification and deregulation. I'm going to go deeper because on one hand, yes, simplification is important because things should be easy and the legislations cannot be so complex, otherwise we cannot really implement them in real life settings. But on the other hand, simplification doesn't mean we have to deregulate things, and it's a really interesting paradox. And I just want to ask your take on it. How would you elaborate on the risks of fragmented regulations?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it's important to note that I and many others, we do not oppose simplification as such. I think as you said it, I think simplification is a good idea, cutting out bureaucracy, making things more efficient, streamlining methods, adjusting definitions. making things more workable for businesses. I don't think anybody seriously has a problem with that. The problem comes in if the simplification terminology is used as a disguise for actually rolling back key aspects of regulations. And I think this is something where, or this is something that we've actually seen throughout the last couple of months. I mean, just to give you an example, on the reporting front, for instance, we are talking about 80 to 90% of companies being kind of pushed out of the regulation. And in my humble opinion, this has nothing to do with simplification. You don't simplify anything by that, right? So this is, I think, deregulations. And we face enormous risks here because at the end of the day, when companies do not do due diligence any longer, when they do not understand their value chains, the supply chains any longer, then we have a problem because they do not have the information they need in order to manage risks in the future. So I think we are at an important point in time where we decide how much information really companies will have in the future.
Exactly. And especially as you pointed out, everything comes down to the supply chains and value chains. So issues are not at the organizational level anymore. We talk about really complex settings in which supply chain and value chain members must be involved and empowered. And also, I was reading your articles, and one of your research recently also touches upon how much businesses actually support the legislations and robust regulations. And I also come across something similar in my own research in the context of fashion and luxury. Actually, especially SMEs, they want legislations and they want regulations because they also want to understand who is transparent, who is honest, and who is just doing the dirty work without even being somehow like the observed by the public. Here also, I want to ask your opinion about this satisfaction versus dissatisfaction because so many people also have done the work. Many companies have implemented, have taken actions, have implemented certain things, but now in this chaos, some other companies are taking a step back, and this creates an environment in which competition is not fair and things are getting really complex. So, what do you think of this paradoxical situation at the moment?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think we are at the situation right now where we see everything but simplification. Actually, it's become a pretty much of a chaotic situation right now. A lot of companies, I would say, that I'm talking to, they are in what I would label a wait and see mentality. So they kind of see, let's see what the final outcome will be, politically speaking, and then based on this, we kind of move ahead. You're absolutely right in pointing out some companies have been really upset because they made big investments, for instance, into due diligence systems that they try to build up or reporting systems, and which they now, at least legally speaking, maybe not need any longer. But we should not forget in this debate that I think at the end of the day, maybe there's also a good aspect because once you take the compliance away, once you don't make it legally required any longer for some companies, this actually, at least in some companies, kicks off a reflection process for the companies, whether they should still voluntarily comply with these kind of frameworks and where the value in all of this is. So, as you alluded to in the beginning, of course, some companies see this of having a lot of value for them. For instance, because they're buyers, they demand the information, so they need the kind of information. Whereas others, I think, see it as only a compliance, as a tick box exercise, and this is, of course, then for them problematic in the sense, that they cannot really reap much value. So I think at this point in time, we are at a situation where a lot of mid-sized and smaller companies need to ask themselves exactly this question. Where is the value in due diligence? Where is the value in reporting? And then they go ahead.
Exactly. And as long as we still keep seeing legislations as a tick box exercise, we cannot change anything, especially in the context of climate change with lots of inequality problems. We have to be a little bit long-term oriented. And also, I appreciate your research and your feedback all the time. You always underline the importance between short-term and long-term planning and mechanisms to come up with ideas. Would you like to say something about how important it is to be long-term oriented when it comes to sustainability?
Well, it's very, very important because, I mean, the sustainability debate is, after all, a long-term debate. But I think we should not make the mistake to only believe, oh, sustainability, this is 20 years from now. I think this is completely wrong. Because if you look at some of the markets, you already see that in the here and in the now, the markets are changing. We look at agricultural commodities, we know the prices of which have been changing significantly due to climate change effect. We look at the home insurance market in different countries, the UK, but also the US, where the price premiums are kind of skyrocketing due to effects of climate change. So if you just take these two examples, you kind of see that sectors are changing. There are these effects, and I think we cannot just always say, oh, this is only for in 20 years from now. This is for the here, this is for the now. And you need to be prepared in the here and in the now, and not in 20 years. And this requires, of course, managerial capabilities. This requires managerial discretion. And I think a lot of people in organizations, a lot of decision makers in organizations, they do not think long term. They think until the next quarter, or maybe until the end of the year. If it the most, they maybe think in their own strategy cycles, 3 to 4 years, but not beyond that. And I think this is a significant problem where it kind of shows how difficult it is to get these messages across.
Exactly. And you say something really important. I think capabilities and also leadership is not long term, and we have to really cultivate those skills that will empower us to embrace the future, because without the natural resources, without social issues, equality that we will actually craft in the long term, we cannot have a business to survive today. So long-term things, strategy is really important. So thank you for accentuating that. And last question, and I'm really grateful for your time. But before you go, one final question. We are in this supply chain management discipline, and our colleagues are looking into supply chains, value chains, suppliers, subcontractors, etc. In the context of sustainability, governance structures, and legislations, due diligence, would you give a message to supply chain scholars to explain, explore, and understand these things, issues further? What would you say to supply chain community to bring these conversations forward?
That's a big that's really a big question, and of course there are people who are much smarter on this than me, and they have researched this much longer and in different contexts. But I would like to pick up maybe from the beginning of our conversation the omnibus debate, where I also think that scholars can actually make an impact, because we as scholars, we need to understand better what is happening beyond tier one. And this is let's not fool ourselves. The problems, the environmental problems, the social problems, the human rights problems, they are beyond tier one. And the omnibus basically proposes to kind of cap the information at tier one, unless there are special circumstances and you can provide plausible information of misconduct around the supply chain. So I think this understanding, what is happening in tier two, tier three, in these informal networks that often exist and that are also part of supply and value chains, I think this is absolutely decisive, because this is also what the policymakers don't get at the moment, because they simply don't see this as a significant problem. But all the supply chain scholars that I talk to, they would say, well, the problem, of course, from a sustainability perspective and a supply chain perspective, is beyond tier one, and not at the direct interaction level between the companies and the suppliers. So I think this is a big research challenge for all of us to first of all, I think, gain more insights and also to communicate this better to the policymakers, because if we had done this, we probably wouldn't be where we are right now.
Absolutely, 100%. So it is our, let's say, call for action for all the scholars to join forces, to collaborate, to create conversations, and also to challenge policymakers, especially supply chain management scholars, have fantastic research insights and evidence to bring insights from lower tiers. So we need all of us to be in these conversations, to support you, to support your colleagues, to support all of us to say and give messages in substantial forms. Andreas, thank you so much for joining us. It has been really great having you here with us.
Thank you very much indeed, Hakan, for inviting. Really appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So thank you everyone for listening to us. Please stay in these conversations. We are in this together. So hopefully this short conversation will inspire you to start asking questions, to demand transparency, and to be part of the change that we need desperately. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.
All right.